Hey guys, how's it going? First of all, thanks so much for the donations that have come in. It means so much. And more than the financial donations, it's the comments and the fact that people care and are getting something out of this that really, really make me excited and happy and add to the benefit of getting to speak to people. The other really exciting news is that we've got t-shirts ready finally. So you can check those out. We've partnered up with T-Mill. There's a link from offgrid.vision to the shop. They are organic cotton and organic bamboo. There's some hoodies. The amount of contribution you make in the project is written on each description, which is cool. But they are just great t-shirts as well. So hope you guys enjoy those. There are a bunch of new episodes coming. I'm super excited about many of them. Well, all of them actually, which is the beauty of doing this. But this next one is something special for a number of reasons. It's the first interview I've done with someone who I've never met in person. I got in touch with John a few years ago, thanks to his work that he's been doing whistleblowing for Big Oil, or against Big Oil, I should say. He has shown a courage that, to be honest, I don't know that I would have. And I probably know that I don't have. He has stood by his word. He's taken action where a lot of people don't. But he answers a question to himself that I ask, which is, would I have the courage to stand up for what I think is right if I was faced with force? And that's a question that we all ask ourselves in some way or another throughout our lives, whether it's in the playground, in kindergarten, or in a law room or law court or courtroom as adults. So here is someone who has answered that question and who continues to answer it. And I couldn't be more excited to bring you this conversation with John Bolenbaugh. Okay, John, thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's pretty early where you are. But I just wanted to say thank you for being here with us and having what I hope is going to be a good, productive conversation.
And thank you for having me. It's quite a journey over there from where you are. I'm over here in Michigan, and it's an honor to be able to expose and talk about what I've been through in my community.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem that I followed from afar. I was following oil spills all my life, it feels like, and I've been following the Dakota and the pipeline stuff from afar and feeling that it was a worldwide thing, not just a native problem or an American problem. But I guess that's the nature of today's world. So this podcast is going out to people all over the world. I've seen the statistics now for the first shows, and there's loads of countries that listen. So that's great news. But let me just ask you a simple question to start off with. When people say to you, John, what do you do? What do you say to them?
I tell them I'm a whistleblower. I say I used to work for Big Oil, and largest inland oil spill in United States history happened in my community, in my backyard. And I try to tell the world about the cover-up that happened and all the sick residents. And then they start asking me questions normally. And we start a conversation, and then the wife says, honey, we got to go. So that's how it normally goes.
I sort of know the feeling. I think when I start to talk about off-grid stuff, I often get the eyes rolling. So I think I'm with you on that one. But I'm just trying to picture that happening to me, suddenly finding out that there's a lot of oil just coming into the ground where I live. I mean, can you take me through how it felt, or how the news broke, and what the sort of development was at the beginning?
Well, we found out later that there was 92 cracks for 5 years. And they decided that they kept wanting to get permits to extend the work. And so that's the backstory. Then when the spill happened, I was called. I was in Florida on vacation. They said, John, get up here now. There's an oil spill in our community. And found out later when I got to Michigan, which I drove straight through in one day, it was in my actual backyard. And so we just started being positioned to do different jobs. I became in charge of materials. And then they put me in charge of this huge yard with 7 companies, and I was just directing people where to go, where to put your boats, where to go to, get shovels and what insect repellent or whatever they needed. I mean, I was in charge of the whole yard. And so then I switched over because they pretty much was letting go all union guys. I found out they didn't want local workers, and I'll explain that later. So then I started working for a company called SET Environmental as a subcontractor. And we still did what Enbridge, the oil company, told us to, but we weren't in charge. And so I started cleaning up oil and started seeing some fishy stuff where they wouldn't clean up oil, and then they'd say, well, we're going to be there the next day. And that crew that's supposed to be at that location the next day was with us somewhere else. And so then I learned that they weren't cleaning up these areas. But I was working, 14, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, I really couldn't investigate like I wanted to. And then we became part of a SCAT team where we were the final people that signed off on an area. When we said it was done, it was done. And then they would plant grass over it. Well, I noticed it wasn't done, and they were saying it was, and they were signing off on it, and they were planting grass over the oil.
So who is they? Sorry to interrupt. Who's they?
Enbridge, SET Environmental. There was dozens and dozens of companies involved with this, and the EPA, the government. I mean, I can 100% prove that our government, the Environmental Protection Agency, was involved in the largest oil spill cover-up in United States history. I can prove it. And I mean, matter of fact, the day after I reported the cover-up, they did a background check on me, and so they could find dirt against me instead of actually asking me where's the buried oil. They've never actually asked me that question. Where's the oil? Prove this to me. And so it was a long struggle. I got fired the next day after I reported the cover up, and they said I stole gasoline, and I actually 2 years later proved that never happened through supervisors that testified that was a lie. But they did everything they could to discredit me, and so it was SET Environmental, Enbridge, EPA. Those are the basic three.
So this is in July of 2010. Is that correct?
Yeah, they said the spill happened on the 26th, but we have residents, several, not just one, we have several that said that they saw the oil and they smelled the oil because they were closer to where the spill was on the 23rd. So we believe it was leaking for 3 entire days. And Enbridge says that 844,000 gallons spilled, but the EPA says that they cleaned up over 1.3 million gallons of oil. So there's a huge discrepancy there of 400,000 or 500,000. Then you have the fact that it might have happened 2 days, 3 days before they're saying it happened. So it could have been 3 to 4 million gallons. And I really believe that's what it was. Because most of the oil is sitting at the bottom of the river, and there's really no way for nobody to prove that it's still there. I proved a lot of it was at the bottom of the river, and they had to re-dredge and re-clean the river, costing about $600 million. But it's really hard to prove.
Sure. So can we just step back 1 second and think, and just could you explain what is involved in cleaning up oil? I mean, to me, it sounds like an impossible task.
Well, especially as with tar sand oil, because on the Fiscus scale of 1 to 10, tar sand oil is an 11. It is like thick peanut butter. And when they separate the tar and the sand in Canada, where most of all the tar sands come from, then the sand particles are still left in it, little tiny ones. And it's very corrosive. It eats away at the insides of the pipe. That's why there's so many spills now compared to what there used to be, because the pipes are being worn away by this type of oil. It's also 82% more toxic than your normal conventional oil that you put in your car. And they can't get it to flow through these pipes. It's impossible. So they use thinner, like paint thinner. And it's benzene and toluene and hydrogen sulfide and hexane, dectane, methane, propane. on and on. All these chemicals, thin it out, and then they use high intense heat and pressure to push it through the pipe. And it's not really the oil that's killing people when there's a spill. It's actually the fumes of the paint thinners or the oil thinners that is actually poisoning people. We have 7 kids with leukemia right now in our local school. We had dozens of people die. We have clusters of cancer right now that doctors are having meetings about. And they're trying to say, where is it coming from? We tested the water. We don't find anything in the water. Well, the thing is, it's in the mud underneath the water. And also, 90% of the poisoning was in the fumes that we breathed in for months.
Wow. So in terms of cleaning that up, what does one do? I mean, what can one do?
Well, I mean, what we tried to do, and I'll quote from my company that was working on the spill. We were told we're going to clean up the bottom of the river. And I asked my supervisors, do we know how to do that? And he said, no, but you're going to say that we're experts at it. And I just kind of chuckled. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And so this is all a part of court record. This is, everything I say, I always try to be as factual as possible. And so then we started taking these huge hoses and with PVC pipe and about 12 foot long, and we would try to shoot water into the bottom of the riverbed, so it would separate the mud and the oil, and you would hope some of the oil would then float to the top. And some of that did happen, but it was taking weeks and months, and so they were starting to say, hey, it's clean. They would sign off on the area even though it was full of oil. And that's actually how I got fired. They said an area was clean, a huge lake, pond, a man-made pond lake area, and they said it was done, and they signed off on it. And I said, you're not going to do this in my community. And I'm going to the EPA again tomorrow, and I'm going to the press, and I'm going to turn you guys in. And so then, of course, I get fired the very next morning. And so other ways to clean it up is just lots of shovels. You got to dig. You got to, backhoes, cranes, filling up tens of thousands of bags of oil from in the woods where you're trying to dig. The problem is in the swamps, you couldn't really walk back there, and it was too expensive to build roads back there. And so we had 40 miles of area with swamps in it, and it was full of oil. So what they decided to do was just sprinkle dirt over the top, put a brown canvas, and then they would have grass seed in the canvas. And so when the grass grows through, which is modified grass that can grow in oil, then you wouldn't even know the oil was under there. I wouldn't even know. I had to dig thousands of holes just to find a lot of the cover up.
So let's. I remember seeing that on the documentary, and it's stunning to see the oil come up, it's just blatantly oil once you do dig the right place. But just to go back 1 second, so the leak is from a pipe into a river, is that correct?
Yeah, I went into a huge area by a union, a sheet metal union shop, and it filled up, basically making a lake for itself. Then it went over this hill, so I had to be about 4 foot tall to go over the hill. And then it went into a creek and went 2 miles into the Kalamazoo River. Then it went to Lake Michigan. A lot of the oil went to Lake Michigan, or at least the poison contaminant.
Wow. So how far is Lake Michigan away from your at the area from the leak?
I'm guessing 100 miles.
Wow.
75, 100.
So, and can you just describe the kind of community it is in terms of, I mean, I can imagine that this isn't going past, loads of politicians' homes who would, get things going, get things solved much quicker. And what kind of community is it?
A middle class to poor community. You have some poor areas, and they basically, anybody that was prominent or lived in a good area, the company settled with them quickly for a lot of money. But all the 80% of the other people, basically, they didn't get anything. I mean, literally, people were getting $500, and their medical bills were $5,000 already. And so, but the oil company would say, well, sue us, take us to court, prove that that medical bill is from us. And you need, you got to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for several experts just to try to fight them. And you can't do it by yourself. So there was class action lawsuits, but even the class action lawsuits, the people were getting 500 to $1,000. It's really scary to think about it, that these people can be poisoned and then you can't sue. You only have 3 years to sue. And most of the really major illnesses, leukemia, cancer, stuff like that, happen after the 3 years. And you just don't have enough money to sue them to prove that it came from that.
So you've been involved since sort of day one, the leak, in cleaning it up, and then saying, "Wait a second, this is not being cleaned up." When did you get fired?
October 15th, 2010.
Okay, right.
I reported the cover up on my birthday, and I had the next day off, and which was the first day out of like 60 to 70 days I had off. I was working, like I said, 14 to 16 hours a day, for 60 some days straight. Then all of a sudden I'm fired, and it was devastating, but I knew why. I mean, and I didn't know what else to do, so I just started making YouTube videos. Just started, and even as a worker, I was taking some small video of the cover up, and I didn't really think about that this was going to be a documentary someday, that this was going to be world news. And I started, videotaping just small sections, 20 seconds here, a minute here. But I was using this tiny little BlackBerry phone that really had poor quality of video. And I wish I would have known back then to buy a better camera, but obviously you'll get fired immediately if I have a camera out there. And we were allowed to text message people. So as we were texting people, I would pretend like I was texting, and then I was actually videotaping people around me or the cover up.
Wow. So you knew pretty much straight away that you weren't going to accept this situation.
Oh, and I even complained to my bosses, and they told me to shut up, and they said, "We'll fire you." And I didn't care about getting fired. I didn't care about the money, but the longer that I worked, the more cover up I saw, because they had security and police everywhere, and nobody was allowed to be by the contaminants. So nobody would see the cover up unless they were a worker. So I tried to do the best I could to stay a worker as long as possible, and not for the money, just so I could investigate.
So what was the social pressure for you? I mean, I guess is it a sort of, well, first of all, I guess my first question is what percentage of households are benefiting in some way from the oil industry, cleanup, insurance, whatever? What sort of percentage would you guess?
Well, I really don't know how to figure that in households, but my whole family works for oil companies, and I'm not against oil. What I'm against is cover-ups. I'm against, having the pipelines near waterways. I'm against any of the extra foreign pipelines that we don't need in our country, which is about 50%. In America, we export about 50% of all the oil, but we say there's a shortage and we say we need it, And so it's for money, and they don't care about poisoning us. And I'm learning that they own the water companies. They own the bottled water companies. They own the pharmaceutical companies. They own the hospitals. You have to think the 1% to 5% that own everything. They don't care if there's an oil spill. And so this took me several years to figure out, to answer your question, is they profit from oil spills. And at first it sound crazy to think that. But if they fix a pipe, they lose about 8 million a day. And in Kalamazoo, it was 9 million a day they would have lost on this pipeline, 6 feet. And it would have taken 6 months to a year to fix the entire pipe. So you're losing $500 million to $1 billion where you not get any of that revenue back. So what they do is they just wait for the actual spill to happen. And 90% of the time it's in the back of the woods, and it's not as big, and they shut it off faster. And they normally just say it's maintenance, and they go in this farmer's field and they clean it up and they pay the farmer off. That's what normally happens. Well, in this case, because it went into the river and it was so big and thousands of people in the world were seeing this, that they couldn't cover it up. Now, another way they make money is the insurance company hires them to clean up their own mess. The insurance company pays for lost revenue, pays to fix the pipe, pays for all the lawsuits, and they normally have a $650 million ceiling. The largest oil spill prior to this one was $150 million to clean up and pay for lost revenue and everything. So they had a huge gap. They didn't expect a John Bolenbaugh like me to prove that they don't clean it up right, and then as a result they had to clean it up better, which costed an extra $600 million above their lawsuit amount. But they also raise the gas prices in the local area, and they profit off that, and then they buy all the land because nobody wants to live there anymore. So now they own all this property. And thanks for waiting.
No, please. Because the question I had, I knew about the insurance revenue. I've sort of two questions. I guess one is that I've heard, maybe you can confirm, that like 1.5 percentage drop in pressure, i.e., oil spilling regularly, is considered normal. Is that true?
Yeah. So the things that you might have heard about over the years all came from me. 8 years ago, I was on C-SPAN and I was telling these same exact things. And nobody knew about this at the time, that you can't clean up this tar sand oil, it sinks to the bottom, that the pipelines can leak every single day up to 1.5% loss in pressure, and no alarms will go off. So not even the oil company knows they're leaking 100 gallons here, 50 gallons here, 500 gallons here, as long as it's less than 1.5%, which is a great amount, because if you have a 5,000 gallon a day pipeline, they can legally leak 5,000 gallons and no alarm will go off. And when I say legally, I mean they get away with it. And so you can poison great deals of underground water systems on a daily basis. And as I said, it's impossible for anybody to know, even the oil companies. And so that's one thing. And it's just crazy that they can get away with that. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just the numbers just for a second. So let's say a normal, like an average oil pipeline. I know very little about this. So would be pumping, you said, how many gallons a day?
Well, some of the larger ones are 500,000 gallons a day, but You do have your average one, I'm just guessing, at approximately 200,000 gallons a day.
And so 1% of pressure drop is like saying 1% of that amount,
which would be 2,000 in that solar pipeline. Yeah. And it's the steel they use is cheap steel. I've interviewed lots of workers that have said they can't, and I don't give their names out because I don't want them to get fired, because now they're on the inside. I have probably 10 guys on the inside that are all the time watching for illegal activity, for cover-ups. And then they'll secretly call me and tell me if they see anything. I have a lot of people that have quit the oil industry because of my videos. And I've had people, just tell me, John, I can't do this anymore. And so then we try to get them. We don't want people to lose jobs. So we get them to move over to solar. I'm actually working with a solar company, and we're trying to get 2 million homes with solar in the next couple of years. And we've already accomplished tens of thousands of homes. We're working really hard. Amazing company. And we're in Puerto Rico, Australia, Canada, United States. We give zero down solar, and we make sure their electric bill is less than their their normal solar bill is less than their electric bill. So from day one, they save money and they increase the value of their home by 20 to 30,000. So since we started this program, it's amazing, because these people now can afford, if they have good credit, to be able to put solar on their home. And as a result, now they're paying a fraction of the cost, because electric goes up every year about 5%, and it's going to keep going up. That's just the way it is.
Sure. I mean, I work a lot with Earthships, which are independent off-grid houses made out of reused materials. My audience knows them very well, but they're made out of tires and bottles. They heat themselves and cool themselves using thermal mass from the sun. They treat their own sewage, collect water, generate electricity, and you can grow food inside them. So they're another solution, people, who want to live independently. Here in Europe, we have a situation where, for instance, I live in Italy that gets all its gas from Russia. So essentially, if anything, if the Russians were to, for whatever reason, turn off the taps, the whole of Italy would be cold in winter. And this is a solution sitting right there. And my philosophy is to focus on what we can do about stuff and not whine about. Well, it's not fair to say whine because there's legitimate reasons to sort of cry foul, but to really try and focus on what we can do rather than what's gone. But having said that, you touched on some of the human cost here, which has just been sort of atrocious. I mean, do you have any sort of numbers of the people suffering from this particular well? And maybe we could put that then in context of like nationally, because I know you've been involved in other wells.
Well, yes, I've been to other oil spills, many of them, and documented them. I'm just going to give you my family, and just remember that there is, 50,000 families in my community, and we all breathed in these chemicals. So, in my situation alone, my head supervisor on the spill died within 3 years after the spill. My legs and ankles swell up so bad that I can't walk some days. I get migraines, headaches. My kidney's been affected. My daughter was born with a extra thumb, which it wasn't a big deal. We had surgery a year later because she had the bone in it and everything. But there was lots of deformities in lots of children. We had lots of miscarriages. Back to my family, my mother, she lost about 40 to 50 pounds in weight. Can't prove why, but all of a sudden within a year, she starts losing all this weight. My stepdad had cancer cut out of his face about 4 years after the spill. My uncle, he lived right next to where the oil spill was, and he got a blood disorder, and they had to cut off one leg, and next year they cut off the second leg, and then he passed away. My dog got tumors and had seizures and died. My cat got a tumor and died. And so that's just my family. That's not counting hundreds of other families that had major issues that lived right next to the river.
I'm just super sorry to hear it. I can't tell you. I just can't imagine it. It's very difficult from afar to just even contemplate something like that happening.
Well, that's why I do what I do. That's why I go to several other oil spills. That's why after 8 years, I've spent 130 grand of my personal money to do this. I literally only get about $200 in donations a month. That's a week's worth of gas if I'm lucky. And, that's not counting anything else. And I interview all these sick people, and I got camera equipment. I now have an RV that I've purchased where I travel around the country. Last year I went to 20 different states, did 50 it was about 50 presentations total, but 35 major ones. And we told tens of thousands of people about what's going on, about these secrets, about how we can protect other communities. And we're trying to now stop pipelines at the permit process. And that's why I was asked to go out to Standing Rock by some of the chiefs. And if you want to go into that in the future, let me know.
I would love to. I mean, I was fascinated watching that from Facebook. I had a couple of friends who were there. I saw their videos. I saw other videos, and yeah, maybe just give me a little, give us a review of what happened there when you arrived, what was going on, and how you were able to contribute.
Well, I was working selling windows off to the side so I could, feed I have 3 kids. And all of a sudden I get this phone call from a chief, and they're asking me to come out to Standing Rock. And Archambault also called me. So I I go out there for 4 days. I take a friend out with me, Native American friend, and we stay and we're just shocked. We can't believe this. So I come home and I start crying and I make a live video and we had over 1 million hits. And so I'm like, honey, I got to go back out. So me and my wife, we planned on getting married anyways, but we got married on 11/11. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And so then we went out to Standing Rock. We had our honeymoon and they actually let me play my documentary. And it was just a short 30-minute piece at the time. I didn't have my documentary made. We actually had 500 to 700 people sit there at the sacred fire, which they don't do this normally. Matter of fact, I've never heard them doing it with anybody else. And they allowed me to play next to the sacred fire because it's that important. And then they allowed me to videotape them doing their drumming ceremonies and prayer and stuff. And so I was really honored. I made videos about that. I actually stayed for 6 weeks out there. And I mean, I got shot with rubber bullets. I got sprayed with water hoses in 20-degree weather. They were flying over the top of us and they were dropping chemicals that were actually making everybody cough and sick. They were jamming all of our live videos and all of our Wi-Fi so people couldn't tell the world about this. And when they would arrest people, they would take their SD cards and just throw them away or burn them or whatever they would do. But they sure weren't giving them back to the reporters and the civilians. So there's probably 50% of all the footage that would have been out there that is gone. I literally have 4 terabytes of footage standing on. I haven't even edited probably 3.5 terabytes of it. I have so much footage I could probably make a movie about it. But I'm just trying to tell the world about all this stuff that's going on. But the police were so corrupt out there that they were literally shooting us and spraying us with water hoses and mace on the opposite side of barbed wire, 30 feet away, with no danger to the police. They were just doing it just because they were told to by the oil company. And yes, the oil companies were paying the police station and the government to terrorize 10,000 amazing water protectors.
Wow, I saw a lot of that footage, or at least some of it, and there are some moments where you see things which are just beyond the pale. I mean, just as you said, no threat whatsoever, and it makes you wonder, where someone has to be within themselves to be able to do that. But that's another topic. What happened, in the sense that I remember them being some sort of concession, and then the protest died down, and then they just kept on going anyway? It seemed to disappear, and then people weren't able to get the interest and the momentum back up and running again. Is that true, or?
Well, North Dakota winters are brutal.
Wow,
we're talking about below zero weather. And so right before we had, I think it was about 4,000 veterans from around the world come, that was going to stand up and say, you're not going to shoot Native Americans anymore. You're not going to shoot these reporters anymore. They were actually singling out reporters. If you're a reporter with a camera, they were actually, most of the time, they were trying, like when you were changing your film or something, you put a new SD card or a new battery in, you had your camera down, they would shoot you 10 times in a row just trying to injure you so you would leave. And they wanted to, it was sickening what they were doing. They were getting paid about 10 grand a week to do this stuff, each guy. And so we were trying to figure out what to do, how to be peaceful and prayerful and just do ceremonies. But we found out through government documents that Tiger Swan was hired and they had infiltrators. So they had FBI and other infiltrators that came into camp and were paid to throw rocks, were paid to shoot a weapon, were paid to start fires. They were paid to make the water protectors, the innocent water protectors, look like they were bad people. And they weren't. It was the government that was actually burning these trucks. And and it was Tiger Swan that was doing this. And so it's they tried to fool all of us, but we got a lot of the documents. We have so much footage that it's just undeniable. But you're right, the world kind of it fizzled out because Obama said they were going to stop the pipeline, which I knew was a lie because I worked for a pipeline company. I knew it was just a ploy to get people to leave. And as soon as most of the people left and winter started to kick in, then they said, well, you have to evacuate or we're going to come through and take you and arrest you and give you a felony. And so you had a great deal of the people that stayed. I stayed all the way till a couple days before Christmas, and I came home because I had to be home for the family, with my kids. But I wanted to stay. I never wanted to leave.
What a crazy situation. There was a lot of hope in Standing Rock. It felt like a sort of global drawing the line in the sand, didn't it, in somehow? And it did fizzle out, but it's going to come back somewhere else. But given the amount of traveling you do, the conferences you go to, what kind of community has been set up around this issue that you've seen? I mean, you started, I imagine, very much alone, but surely you have, as you said, teams inside companies. You must have other people, other whistleblowers. What sort of community do you feel part of?
Well, it's an amazing community. I mean, I'm considered probably one of the top 2 or 3 leaders in the water protectment movement. I'm considered the number one guy in the fossil fuel industry that is a whistleblower. So it's honorable to get all these message on a daily, weekly basis. It really brightens my heart getting hero comments and just I am in love with all these people. I fell in love with my community when I was interviewing all these sick people. You just fall in love with these people. And I want to make a difference. And I do have a team around me, but it's just not big enough. And I can't hire anybody because we don't get any funds. I literally pay for most of everything out of my pocket. I never had a PayPal for 6.5 years of doing this. And I paid my own money because I wanted to prove to the world I was doing it for the right reasons. It had nothing to do with income. And Standing Rock happened, and the Chiefs actually told me to get a PayPal. So, but the problem is I'm just not getting enough to, I got about $20,000 when I was out to Standing Rock, but I spent $14,000 on giving it back to Standing Rock by blankets and heaters and hand warmers and different things, and I had people staying in my camper on a nightly basis to stay warm. I did the best I can, but it's not enough. So if anybody ever wants to help, they can go to my website and donate $11.11 a month. It's not a lot, but it really, if we can get enough people to do that, then we can make a difference.
Well, I'll have a link to that. I'll have a link to that and a few films, a few selected films, including the longer documentary, your site, and I'll have that in the show notes below here. An interesting aside, I mean, I feel like I don't know if you know much about this, but I've begun to get curious about cryptocurrencies and the potential within them for micro donations, for many small donations from many different people as many times as people want, and that gives me hope because it takes away this advertising model that we have. And I can imagine, when I see something happening, I remember I heard about your work I think 2 years ago just by on YouTube. And it inspired me. At the time I didn't have much money at all, but it inspired me to give something because that's how we vote for change. So I hope people will hear this and will, decide, okay, well, I won't have a cup of coffee today. I'll pay it forward to the work that you do.
If I could just get 1,000 people to do $11 a day, I could literally hire 3 or 4 people on a weekly basis to work full time, where we could actually travel around to dozens of oil spills. But this is getting bigger.
So $11 a month, that would be, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, another thing I'm doing, so everybody knows that I'm still going forward, is I have a whistleblower convention, and it's called awakeningthetruth.com. Awakeningthetruth.com. And we have ex-CIA, ex-NSA, ex-White House. We're going to talk about vaccines and chemtrails, 9/11, oil, fracking, nuclear, child trafficking, just anything we can to tell the world. And we got all these amazing whistleblowers coming. Smart meters. I just saw a documentary. Smart meters, which are the digital electrical meters on the outside of your house. If it's the new digital type, it's actually shooting radiation out in your community, and it's poisoning everybody. And I think it's, and I didn't know about this. This is something that they've spent years studying, many scientists, and they've actually now got some lawsuits where they're taking these down because of some communities, like a trailer park will have 20 of these all next to each other, and people are dying. They're getting cancer from it. So,
well, John, I want to be conscious, of your time, but I feel like you've asked the audience, certain things. Is there anything else or any other resources? You've mentioned awakeningtruth.com. There's your site, which will be linked to below. Are there any other documentaries or books or resources that you'd like people to read, or any general ask of the audience?
Well, if anybody in America hears this and you're interested in solar on your home, please go to freedomfromfossilfuels.com. Freedomfromfossilfuels.com. And just put in your zip code, and then we will find out if you can actually save some money by going solar. I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor. I hear great things about you, and I know that you donated several years ago, and I want to thank you for that donation. Actually, I believe it was in 2016, I believe, when you donated. And it all helps. It does. And if you don't have the money to donate, please share this documentary 100 times. And that's amazing. That will help. I do this. I've had 7 death threats and attempts on my life. I've had my brakes cut, my tires slashed. I've been hit over the head. I've been beat up by guys. I had bolts taken out of my wheels. I've had my gas filters on my vehicle loosened. They don't want me around. And so now we have cameras circling my house, and I wear a bulletproof vest sometimes. I give speeches, and I have security, and it's expensive. And like I said, I pay for this out of my pocket. So anybody that can help, thank you very much.
Well, thanks to you, John, for the work you do. It really is inspiring. It's courageous in the true sense of the word. So thanks again, and we'll keep in touch for sure.
God bless all of you, and have a wonderful day, Patrick.
You too. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Before you go, or rather immediately after you've gone, please go down to iTunes, leave a review, help us grow, get more guests, raise more money for projects. We have other projects coming up. You can find news about those on offgrid.vision, where you can also get access to other shows and some phenomenal t-shirts which go towards, the profit of which goes towards new projects. If you have any requests for someone to come on the show, do let me know via the site. Until next time, thanks for listening, and see you soon.